Greetings. Thank you for joining us for another video installment. Today we are discussing everything First Offender Act. Okay, so if you have a criminal case, this is one topic that garners a lot of attention. Be happy to discuss a little bit about and break down what the First Offender Act is, what it aims to accomplish, how it can work for or it can also work against you as a defendant. And we'll jump into everything that are pros and cons regarding moving forward with the First Offender Act, okay? And obtaining first offender status. All right, as always, my name is Genghis Shakhan. It is a pleasure to join you. I am the managing partner at Shakhan and Wilkerson Law Firm. We are a boutique law firm, myself and my partner, attorney Chelsea Wilkerson, at the helm. We have a wonderful team that works with us. Being a boutique law firm, we get an opportunity to really get to know our clients, to really get to know our clients' cases, and that really helps us advance our clients' interests when it comes to legal matters and making arguments and advancing their legal interest in court. The better we know them, the better more familiar we are with their legal goals. And so we love to handle cases in small batches. That is, I think, a benefit of going with a smaller firm as opposed to going with a much larger firm where you might be just a number. Okay, so you're not just a number with Shakhan and Wilkerson Law. All right, that being said, we cover a few different areas of law. One is going to be divorce and family law, and that under that falls things like legitimation, child custody, as well as modifications or contempt actions in terms of domestic relations. Then we also cover criminal defense, okay? And so that might include felonies as well as misdemeanors. And then we also take on personal injury cases, okay? So those are the three areas where we can help you most if you are interested in the consultation, if you're interested in retaining an attorney. Absolutely give us a call at 404-999-9529 or 478-845-1213. Or you can tap the link up there in our bio and one of our legal experts will be happy to chat with you, get your information, and we'll get on the horn with you usually the same day. So we're pretty good about that. All right, guys, that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into our legal disclaimer really quickly. As always, this is for educational purposes and informational purposes only, okay? By watching this video, it does not establish an attorney-client relationship with you and the law firm of Shakhan and Wilkerson, nor with you and myself. If you need legal representation, if you are seeking an attorney, you would be best served going through a actual consultation. And again, whether that's reaching out to our office or reaching out to another office, as opposed to acting on the information that you hear in this video, okay? It is not intended for you to act on, okay? Just want to make sure that I emphasize that to you, okay? All right, everyone's case is different. Everyone's case has different facts. And so it's not, this information is very generic information intended just for informational purposes, all right? All right, so as you can imagine, you're a defendant. You've been charged with a crime. You've been accused of a crime. You know, especially for the first time. And this can be you can be shaken up by it, okay? And have a lot of questions and a lot of concerns. One of the biggest concerns that folks have is that criminal conviction and having that guilty plea on their record. And if that is a concern of yours, then Georgia has just the thing for you. And sometimes it sounds almost too good to be true. It is called the First Offender Act, okay? And what it does is basically it's a treatment that addresses your case in the sentencing phase, okay? And so what I mean by that, I'll break that down here in a bit. But before we do that, just want to tell you a little bit about our mission here at Shakhan and Wilkerson Law is, of course, to educate and empower you as a consumer, okay? And so if you're looking to hire a firm, it's always important for you to have the lexicon, important for you to understand some of the terms, understand, you know, a lot of what goes on when it comes to retaining counsel and what you should be looking for. Or if you are pro se and you're just looking for a little information this video is for you as well. We make a lot of videos for public consumption, with no expectation of being compensated for dispersing and sharing that information. This is for you. Okay. We dedicate usually some time every week for folks we know are pro se, but might benefit from some of this information. A lot of times the courts can't provide it because they can't give you legal advice. So if you take a trip down to the clerk and you're asking a lot of questions, a lot of times they will turn you away. The Superior Court clerk, a lot of times they'll turn you away because they cannot provide legal advice. Okay. And so some of this, again, not intended to be legal advice, I understand that, but some of this is information that folks are just, if you're not in the know, it might not feel very accessible to you. So hopefully this is going to be helpful for you. And if it is, give us a like, give us a follow. If you know someone that's going through this, and when I say this, I mean they are basically been accused of a crime. This might be helpful for them. Make sure that you forward it along to them. Okay. So what is the First Offender Act? Okay. And so basically it's a sentencing option. Okay. And that's one thing that I do want to emphasize, is that it is a sentencing option. Some people feel like the first offender is a fairy godmother or fairy godfather that will sprinkle pixie dust, on the judge or the jury, and is going to somehow or other just address everything that's going on with your case and get you out of there without being held accountable. And that's just not the case. Okay. And it's important to know that it is not available to everyone, okay, that is accused of a crime. And so you do have to meet certain eligibility requirements in order to basically be approved. And again, I do mentioning be approved for the first offender sentencing option, okay? And so that's important. So what is really important to know is that going through, if being essentially adjudicated as a first offender, the court doesn't immediately enter a judgment of guilt against you. Okay. So that is essentially at its core what we are talking about when we mention the first offender. What it does is the court defers adjudication and essentially might place you as a defendant on probation, confine you, may give you community service, may do a combination of all of those things or none of those things. And of course, usually before you have to complete your sentence before it is discharged, okay? And you are exonerated, and essentially you are no longer considered guilty as a matter of law, okay? And so that is the purpose of it. It is the purpose is for it to be a form of rehabilitation and for eligible individuals. And I'm going to talk about its eligibility here momentarily, okay? And so I just want to make sure that we're clear on that, because a lot of times I do have these deep conversations about the first offender and how it, essentially can make everything all right. And that's just not its purpose, not what it was intended for. Okay. And so again, its purpose is basically these a lot of times these lifelong consequences that come with a criminal conviction. It was intended to help, mitigate some of those experiences and conditions that happen as a result of folks being convicted of specific crimes. All right. So let's talk really quickly about who qualifies for first offender. Okay. Because again, not everyone does. So you have to have not been previously convicted of a felony. I'm repeating that. All right. So maybe you were charged with a misdemeanor, convicted of a misdemeanor. You still may have access and be eligible to use your first offender, all right? And so it also is granted at the court's discretion. Okay, a lot of people are not ready for that. At the court's good discretion, you may say, "Hey, I'm eligible. The crime that I committed is a crime that's approved to go forward with first offender. The judge has to accept this." It's at the judge's discretion, okay? And so if you have counsel, your counsel will essentially, make the court aware that we are seeking first offender status, and we are asking the judge to essentially grant it for our client, okay? Because it's at the judge's discretion. So you want to bear that in mind as well, okay? So one important thing that you do want to know is that many people believe that to use first offender, you can't have ever been arrested before. That is just not true, okay? And so you just have to meet the qualification of not having, and others, of not having a prior felony conviction, okay? So keep that in mind. And there's other statutory requirements. And then there's also specific offenses that are eligible and that are ineligible, okay? So we'll cover that here shortly. So let's talk about what crimes are not first offender eligible, okay? And so not every offense actually qualifies. And so I won't get into them specifically, but these serious violent felonies usually are not going to be eligible. Certain sexual offenses are not going to be eligible. Human trafficking offenses, crimes involving child sex exploitation, or offenses involving law enforcement officers, maybe assault on law enforcement officers, other things like DUIs, okay? And so there are a whole host of offenses that do not qualify, and you can absolutely look some of those up online, or if you have your attorney will be more than happy to let you know, whether it's a public defender or a private counsel, what offenses are not going to be eligible, okay? And so make sure that your attorney evaluates whether or not the offense that you've been accused of committing is actually eligible if you are considering using first offender, okay? Let's talk a little quickly about the advantages of first offender. There are a myriad of advantages, as there are disadvantages, to using your first offender status, okay? So for eligible defendants, it can be a boon of pros, okay? And so let's talk about some of that. One is most people come to use first offender status because they want it to be discharged and exonerated of guilt, okay? And so that is a positive, and I'm gonna talk about why that is. You are at the end of completing the first offender, you're not considered to have a criminal conviction for that offense, okay? So some people may say, hey, why is that important? It's important for a number of reasons. For employment, okay? And so if you are seeking a certain type of employment, it might matter if you have a felony conviction in your past. Housing, right? So as housing becomes more and more of an issue in the present time, that can be an issue if you have a felony conviction. Many applications are asking questions about your criminal background. Professional licensing. So if you're seeking to become a teacher or maybe go to the military, education, right? So now I believe, and I don't know all the details of it, but I can recall when I was in school, there was a conversation in order to use loans, government loans, in order to go to school, they were asking questions about whether or not you had committed a felony, right? So you might be barred from taking out certain types of loans if you have a felony conviction, all right? And other just general opportunities. So it's an important form of relief. It can impact, your life and your lifestyle. If you've made this one mistake and you don't want it to really derail you or to impact negatively the quality of your life, this can be a great assistance to you, okay? All right, let's talk about the disadvantages, okay? Because there are disadvantages. It is not a free pass, okay? It is not a free pass. And to receive the benefits, you do actually have to complete the court's sentence, right? Or the conditions imposed by the court, I should say, when you are under that status. And so that can include probation. It can include reporting requirements, counseling, some type of services, community service, restitution. Treatment programs are big. Fines are big. Or there's a possibility, depending on the crime, you're going to be incarcerated as well. Okay, so all of that needs to be completed for you to actually reap the benefits, okay, of the first offender, okay? And if they are not, we're going to talk about what happens if they are not completed here shortly, okay? All right, so what happens if you violate first offender? That's a big question. It's a question that my clients grapple with all the time. It's a question that we have to stand tall before the court and answer on occasion when I have clients that have taken first offender and they are looking at either they are being accused of committing new crimes or they have been accused of violating their probation. Okay. And so, and I will also just to back up really quickly, in order to move forward with that first offender, you generally are pleading guilty to that underlying crime. Okay, that's also something that you want to bear in mind because if you are later on you violate your probation or you violate some condition of your first offender status, that might matter because you'll be adjudicated as guilty. Okay, something that your attorney will have a conversation with you about. Okay, all right. So if you violate first offender, that's where we are now. This is where a lot of folk usually begin to have buyer's remorse about going forward with the first offender status. And so you can get into trouble if you violate probation, if you commit a new crime, or somehow the court just determines that you are now ineligible. So the court can revoke your first offender status, and then you will be then adjudicated as guilty, and they can proceed to sentence you under the law for the original crime that you created, right? And you could be minus the time that you've already served on probation or in detention. You can be resentenced up to the maximum for that original crime. So your exposure looks pretty crazy, right? Depending on the crime, all right? And so that's same, so you could lose, basically what will happen is you're going to lose the benefit of what if you took first offender status for, and that is so that you won't be adjudicated as guilty for that crime. That's gone. In addition to that, you can be resentenced and do even more time. Okay, if you maybe had a aggregate sentence of both being detained as well as probation. Okay, you can do that time in lockup. Okay, so as you can see, there are advantages, but there are disadvantages as well. Okay, and so what happens if you are arrested again? Really the same thing. If you pick up another charge, everything we just discussed happens. Now, I will say this, picking up another charge does not automatically revoke your first offender status. However, something that you want to keep in mind is sometimes it might be one of the statutory grounds to adjudicate you guilty on the original case, okay? And so you got to deal with everything I just shared with you. And on top of it, you now have to address what's going on with the new case, okay? With the new case. So you're dealing with the original case, and then you're dealing with the new case, okay? Possibly being resentenced under the original case, and then the new case, all right? And so that's one of the critical reasons why you absolutely want to have a conversation with your attorney about whether or not first offender is in your best interest, okay? It's not in everyone's best interest, right? Even if you are eligible, even if the crime that you're accused of committing, meets the requirements, it might not be in your best interest, and your attorney will have that conversation with you, okay? Now, is it always the best option? Let's go ahead and segue into it. No, it is not always the best option, not necessarily. Sometimes it is an outstanding resolution. If you've never been in trouble, you don't get in trouble. You've never been in trouble. This is a one-off. It is, was a fluke or somehow or other you got accused of doing this crime, and it's something that you need to have addressed because maybe there's something that your job has certain requirements or a certain license that you possess or a certain license that you are pursuing. They may have certain type of requirements regarding your criminal background history. That all might, be a reason and motivation for you to strongly consider pursuing first offender. Okay. So you things that you want to consider, of course, it might just be beneficial for you to fight the case, right? As opposed to move forward with first offender. There might be just a really strong defense for you. The evidence might be, you can challenge it. There might be a dismissal possible, or maybe something is on the table. Maybe there's some type of diversion program that you might be eligible for. And so sometimes there's these collateral consequences. And you need to think about, again, pros and cons. You have to do a cost benefit analysis and really weigh whether or not it's in your best interest to move forward with first offender status. Okay. So let's talk about some of the common myths regarding first offender. One is that your case just disappears immediately, and that's not true. Okay. You do have to successfully complete the sentence before receiving the legal benefits under the statute. Okay. So whatever your sentence is, whatever the judge gives you as a sentence, that does need to be completed. All right. The second myth is that everyone qualifies. That's also not true. Okay. We talked about that earlier. So there are some cases that are they don't meet the they don't qualify. Just that simple. Okay. Or you may not qualify, or the judge may elect not to give you that opportunity to enjoy the benefits of that status. Okay. Myth number 3 is I don't need a lawyer because they're offering first offender. Again, you absolutely 1,000% want to have this conversation and powwow with your attorney because it might not be something, for all of the reasons that we've just reviewed, that you may want to consider. Okay. Because it's not always going to be in your best interest. All right. And so final thoughts, just something to think about. If you feel like you're deserving of a first offender status, if it's something that you feel like you would benefit from, and you want to avoid the lasting really consequences of certain kind of criminal convictions, you can find that this is a great option for you. It's something that you do want to have a conversation with your attorney about whether or not it's going to work in your favor to essentially seek this status in regards to sentencing, or if it might work against you. Okay. Now, if we can help you out, if you have a criminal case, whether it's a felony or a misdemeanor, and we can assist you, you're always welcome to give our office a call at 404-999-9529 or 478-845-1213. And we will sit in a legal consultation with you. We'll see if it's a case that we can actually help you out with. If not, then we might refer you out to someone else. And some people have different levels of expertise in certain areas, right? And so sometimes we do refer cases out. But if we can assist you and it seems like it might be a good fit for us as well, feel free to give us a call, or you can go hit the link in our bio and we'd be more than happy talk with one of our experts, and we'll absolutely give you a call. Okay. But just as a parting note, I want you to understand, before accepting any plea offer, make sure you understand your rights, as well as your options and the long-term consequences of your decisions. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you as always for joining us. If this has been helpful, give us a like, or if you know someone that is going through a criminal case, feel free to forward this along to them. In addition to that, make sure that you follow us and you hit the notice bell so that you know exactly when we are live, which is happening on a weekly basis, and you're getting those videos. A lot of times we do record private content as well, so you're getting those videos firsthand. All right, guys, pleasure to see you. Any questions or concerns, feel free to enter things into our chat and discussion. A lot of times we'll look over those, and some of the questions we will make videos about. Okay. All right. Have a great one.